How much cash should we have on hand once we retire? That's the question we're going to try to tackle in today's video. And what I want to do, rather than just throwing out some rule of thumb, I want to actually walk through the reasons we want to hold cash. And I've come up with 7 of them. And then for each reason, we're going to talk about 1, how much cash we should have, and then 2, where should we keep it? Now, I'll tell you, one of them is fairly controversial. I take a view of it that's, I think, different than a lot of folks. I'll talk about that one in particular at the end. In some ways, it's maybe the most important. Now, as we go through the 7 reasons, let's keep in mind what cash is. For me, it's an investment that, first of all, is low risk. I'd even say no risk. And 2, that has a stable value, right? We don't want to put something in an investment that's going to go up and down by 10, 20, 30, or 40%. That's not where we want to keep our cash. So by and large, what that means is some type of account that's, for the most part, backed by the U.S. government in one way or another. So that would include bank accounts like checking, savings, say money market account or CD, at least a short-term CD or perhaps no penalty CD, all of which are FDIC insured. I think it could also include money market funds, particularly if they invest primarily in U.S.-backed debt. You can get those at major brokerage firms like Vanguard, Fidelity, and Schwab. It could also include a cash management account. And of course, one of my personal favorites, T-bills. Those are just U.S. government bonds that mature in 1 year or less. Just real quick, we can look at some of the interest rates we're getting today. I'll leave links to all of this below the video. No penalty CDs come in. Really, all of these short-term type investments come in around 5% or higher. Here's some no penalty CDs. Here are, let's see, some savings accounts. The top rates are all in the 5% range or higher. And then if we go over to Fidelity, we can see U.S. Treasury bills. This would be these columns here. We can see 5.36% for 3 months to 5.13 for 1 year. So that's kind of where the rates are coming in at today. And so with that, then let's get to the 7 reasons we might want to hold cash. The first one, I think maybe the most obvious, is just our monthly spending. And here, how much cash we want to have in the checking account. For us, we tend to keep about 1.5 months worth of cash in the checking account. My thinking on that is we've automated almost all of our payments. The credit card gets paid off automatically, the utilities, the cell phone service. And I want to avoid the possibility of bouncing a check or having a payment decline. So we tend to keep about 1.5 months worth of expenses in the checking account. Now, for some of you, Social Security might cover that, or Social Security, and if you have a pension or annuities, might cover it. For us, we do have to kind of take money out of investments, and so for us, that's usually interest and dividends plus my side hustle income from places like YouTube tend to cover it. But the monthly spending, that's the first one, sort of the obvious one, I suppose. Checking account, I think, is where most people would keep that money. That's where we keep it. Unfortunately, our account doesn't earn any interest. Maybe I should do something about that. But for us, it's about 1.5 months worth of expenses in a checking account. So that's number 1. Number 2, emergency fund. We still have emergencies when we retired. It'd be nice if we didn't, but we do now. In the working years, I always thought of emergencies in one of 2 ways. Either an expense emergency, the car breaks down, the furnace goes out, that sort of thing. But when you're working, the other type of emergency is, you lose your job, or maybe you're getting overtime and that goes away. You're expecting a big bonus and that doesn't happen. So you can have income emergencies. I look at that a little differently in retirement, particularly if you've totally retired. You have no job, so you have no job to lose. So you may not have an income type of an emergency to plan for, or maybe it's not as significant. But in my mind, I still am comfortable with the rule of thumb, 3 to 6 months worth of expenses. And part of that is because, we might not have the income type emergency in retirement, but, health care comes into mind. You could certainly have unexpected health expenses at any point in life, but they become certainly more common as we age. And so I just didn't see any reason to change that rule of thumb for us. Of course, for you, you may have a different approach, but I still felt comfortable with 3 to 6 months worth of expenses. In our case, right now, I tend to keep them in T-bills. There's no state income tax. As you saw a minute ago, the yields are good. but certainly you could keep them in certificates of deposit, even longer term CDs if you wanted to. If you used a CD ladder, could certainly keep them in a savings account or a money market fund. So I think many options there for the emergency fund. The third reason to have cash on hand in retirement is just short-term spending goals. Maybe you're going to go on a big vacation this year. You're maybe renovating the kitchen, or buying some sort of out of the ordinary, larger cost item. Obviously, we want to have short-term savings for that. And in our case, again, we tend to use T-bills, but I think any of those savings vehicles would make a lot of sense. I tend to not worry about it until that expense is coming up within the next year. And that's when I start to think about making sure I have the cash that I need. Again, it's not set in stone. That's just sort of worked for us and my own comfort level. And so we do have one of those now. We're doing some work on a house. And so we've got that money at the moment is in T-bills. And the nice thing about T-bills is I can sell them anytime I want. And because they're short-term bonds, even if interest rates have gone up, the value of those T-bills, particularly if you're on the shorter end, say a 3-month T-bill, shouldn't go down significantly because of interest rates. So that's number 3, short-term goals. The fourth one that a lot of people might forget about until it sort of becomes a bit of an emergency are taxes, right? So we often have estimated taxes in retirement. Could be because of dividends and interest in a taxable account. If you're at the age of required minimum distributions, those could trigger the need for estimated taxes. And another really important one are taxes that will be generated if you do Roth conversions. So again, may or may not apply to you, but we always want to think about what the taxes are going to be over the next year, and particularly the estimated taxes as they come due. In fact, we just paid our estimated taxes a few weeks ago for June. So I'm always thinking about, okay, what's the next payment going to look like? And will I have the cash necessary for that? Again, if I've got it several months in advance, typically put it in T-bills, but could also use a high yield savings account to hold that money until it becomes due. Okay, that's number 4. Number 5, income gaps. There may be periods of time where you're not getting a source of income that you'll get later. I think the common example would be you retire, but you've decided to hold off taking Social Security. Maybe you're going to wait a year or 2 or longer. You're holding off so that your monthly benefits will be higher than if you take earlier. So you're going to need some cash to cover that income gap. How you invest it, I think, depends on just how long that gap is going to be. If you're going to wait a year, for example, I would just probably have the money in T-bills, maybe a savings account, could move it into the checking account as I needed it. If you retire, say at 60, and you're not going to take Social Security until 70, I personally would not hold 10 years worth of living expenses in a cash account. I could use an inflation-protected investment like TIPS, or I might just stick with a year's worth of spending money at a time, and for the rest of it, just deploy it into my investment portfolio in whatever stock bond allocation I was using, because 10 years is a pretty long time, and holding that much money in cash is really, I think, long term going to be a big hit to your expected return. So how much you're going to need, of course, depends on how long that gap will be. And I think that in turn might determine how you're going to actually invest that money. Again, 1 year, probably just keep it in cash, checking account, savings account, maybe some T-bills. 10 years, that's a lot different. And there I might actually invest a good portion of it in my stock bond allocation. All right. So I've got 2 more, and I want to actually cover these at the same time. These get into that controversial use of cash in retirement. Number 6 is peace of mind. And number 7, and it's different, it may seem similar, but it's not, it's different, is weathering a stock market crash. And why are they different? So in my mind, peace of mind, maybe you just need some extra money. Maybe you take that emergency fund of 3 to 6 months worth of expenses and say, you know what, I'm going to stretch that out to a year, which, by the way, is exactly what we do. And it's just because I just want some peace of mind. I want to be able to sleep a little better at night, knowing that I've got that money to rely on if I need it. To me, that's very different than a cash cushion to handle a stock market crash. Why? Because if the market were to go down, let's say it goes down 30 or 40% over the next 6 months, in my mind, I'm not going to be spending that 1 year's worth of expenses that I've saved for my peace of mind. That's my peace of mind. I don't want to ever spend it unless it's truly, truly a last resort. So I'm not using that as a cushion against a stock market crash. It stays there, and I don't ever want to spend it unless I absolutely have to. That's peace of mind. And that's just going to vary depending on, well, your individual risk tolerance, personality, what comfort level you need. I will say that the peace of mind cash, I'll call it, long-term does come at a cost. Right now, cash at 5% or more looks terrific, particularly compared with longer-term bonds. But we know long-term, cash really is a drain on your returns. It's generally not going to beat inflation. Right now may be an exception, but long-term, it's generally not going to beat inflation, and it's going to get an expected return far lower, not only than stocks, but far lower than longer-term bonds. And so I want to keep that cash to a minimum. For us, 1 year is just that good comfort level. Of course, what you need could very well be different. Now, that's peace of mind. Cash for a cushion of stock market crash. This is where I read a lot of content online where financial advisors are recommending 2, even 3 years or more of cash to cushion a stock market drop. And the idea would be, let's imagine stocks go down by 30% over the next 6 to 12 months. The theory would be, hey, we don't want to sell our stocks during that kind of market crash. That's okay. We've got, let's say, 2 to 3 years worth of cash. We can spend it instead. I think that is a big, big mistake, and here's why. Most retirees, myself included, we don't have a 100% stock portfolio. That's just not a typical portfolio, really for just about anybody, but certainly not for someone in retirement. I think more common might be 70% stocks, 30% bonds. That would be sort of on the aggressive side. 60-40 is probably more normal. Some might go as conservative as 50% stocks, 50% bonds. But here's the point. If you have that kind of portfolio, for that matter, even an 80-20 portfolio, if stocks are down 30%, you're not going to be spending them. You're going to be spending the fixed income, the bonds. And the way it works in practice, I think, is this. You're going to pull from whatever accounts make sense from a taxable perspective, whether it's a taxable account you're taking money from, traditional IRA, a Roth, or some combination of the three. That's largely going to be driven by tax considerations. And so you might actually pull from stocks, let's say, in a taxable account. But then what are you going to do? You're going to rebalance. You're going to rebalance back to 70-30, rebalance back to 60-40 or 50-50 or 80-20, whatever your asset allocation is. And you may rebalance in a different account than the account you withdrew from. You may take your spending money out of a taxable account and pull it from an S&P 500 index fund because you hold that in a taxable account because it's fairly tax efficient, right? But then what you might do in, say, your traditional retirement account is sell bonds to buy more S&P 500 inside your traditional retirement account. The point is, if you simply rebalance, when the stock market is down, not only will the net result be that you don't sell stocks, you'll actually be a net buyer of stocks, which is exactly what we want to do when the stock market goes down. It's exactly what we were doing when we were still working and saving for retirement, assuming we were rebalancing our portfolio every year. Perhaps then it was 80-20 or 90-10. If the stocks went down, rebalancing forced us to sell bonds to buy stocks. We should be doing the same thing in retirement. This idea of a cash cushion so that we don't sell stocks is, I think, the absolute wrong approach, because we want to be buying stocks when the market's down, and simply rebalancing our portfolio, say, once a year, accomplishes that when the stock market has gone down. Now, I know some of you are going to say, Rob, wait a minute, not so fast there, buddy. What about 2022, when both bonds and stocks were down double digits? Yes, that's true. That was a bloodbath. It didn't matter what you invested in. But here's the thing. That's a once-in-a-century event, roughly. That's about a 1% event where both stocks, high quality, say U.S. government and investment-grade corporate stocks, it's an intermediate term, are down double digits, and stocks are down double digits. That just doesn't happen normally. And it required kind of a perfect storm that included interest rates near 0%, which we no longer have. I'm not saying that it won't happen again. What I am saying is it's a very, very rare occurrence. And I personally think it would be a mistake to position a portfolio based on what happens roughly once every other century. At least that's my take. So I think a cash cushion to weather a stock market crash is the wrong approach because, again, we want to be buying stocks when that happens, not avoiding selling them. We want to be buying them, and we do that simply by rebalancing. So those are the 7, at least, main reasons that I can think of to hold cash. Perhaps where to hold it, how much to hold. Again, the 7th reason is one I generally don't hold cash for. So I have a 0 cash as a cushion against a stock market crash. I just don't think it's necessary. I think it encourages market timing, and it prevents us from doing what we should be doing, and that is actually buying more stocks during a stock market crash, which simple rebalancing can take care of for us. So there you go. That's my take. If you have questions or comments, of course, leave them in the comments below. Be happy to help you out any way I can. And until next time, remember, the best thing money can buy is financial freedom.